Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Tech Check Plus live stream. Welcome, Philip Rosedale. What a day to have you on a day we have a big deal and there's lots of Metaverse talk. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is so great to have you because we've been calling you, on Twitter, the OG sort of Metaverse creator with Second Life. I want to get to all of that. And I want to get to sort of your thoughts on that big deal this morning, being Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, of course. But first, we got a lot of debate of this on Tech Check. What is the Metaverse? What isn't the Metaverse? What is it to you, in your own words?
Well, it certainly feels like it's everything to everybody right now lately. I think the metaverse is two different technological changes that people mix up when they think about it. The first one is going from a 2D internet where everything's two-dimensional to a three-dimensional presentation of information. We see it in games, but we imagine it at work and in other things. But the other big idea that's a technology change is an always-on internet where when you're there are always other people with you. And I think that is actually the more transformative and more difficult one to get to.
So talk a little bit then about how you created Second Life. Were you ahead of your time, just in time? How should we think about this?
I was definitely way ahead of my time. I mean, I think we were very fortunate to get the pieces, broadband and the very early 3D graphics cards working together enough to make Second Life a success. I feel like we were quite early getting it working, yes.
So then what do you make of the current environment? You spoke a little bit about this. Is Meta doing the metaverse? Who's doing it more than others? Is this deal? Is Microsoft doing it? Is NVIDIA? Where are we right now? Why were you guys early? Were users just not ready for it?
Yes, that is a great way of putting it. I think if we walk outside right now and we pick the average person and we put them in front of a great video game that's been making the news like Roblox or Fortnite, or we put them in a business environment with VR goggles on like Facebook has been showing. People aren't ready for that quite yet. The typical person is not going to do it a second or third time, but we are getting there. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. And I think that it'll start to happen. We also should have real concerns about the business models and the moderation and the governance of these types of worlds.
Yeah. So then why now? Why are you returning to Second Life? Why, if you were early before, is the time right now?
Well, at High Fidelity, we spent 10 years, basically, just about now, working on a whole new virtual world for the VR goggles. But what we concluded in about 2019, actually before COVID, was that the VR goggles are far too early for us to make it as a company. That socializing and getting a lot of people together in the same place is an amazing idea, and it's a huge opportunity, but it's just not here yet. And so we started looking for what to do with the technology we had built. And we decided that there's a lot of stuff happening with kids like Roblox and Fortnite that are kind of driving the news around the metaverse. But if you look at stuff for grown-ups, there's really not anything yet. And in fact, Second Life is still, in a lot of ways, the only game in town. So we decided to move, 7 people and an advisory role for myself and some of our patents and some of our money back to Second Life.
And Second Life has certainly had endurance on its side. I know that you guys had millions and millions of users at one point. Now I think it's right around 1 million. What do you want to accomplish? What sort of will this provide? You mentioned Roblox and Fortnite, kind of saying that it was for kids, but adults are on these platforms as well. Why would they go to Second Life instead of Fortnite or Roblox sort of moving into your territory?
Right. Well, of course, we'll have to see. I mean, everybody's going to competitively build things here. But, one thing that does indicate that there is a bright future to all this is that the economy, the ability for people to make money in these virtual worlds is significant. Second Life actually has more people making money, I think, in total than Roblox does from the early reports that they made, but a much smaller audience. As you said, Second Life today is about 1 million people that are actively using it. But that's actually a lot of economy. It's a lot of creative work and economic success that's happening in the environment. What I think will happen is, as I think first desktop technology, more so than VR goggles, as that technology gradually improves and avatars become more compelling and something that we would be comfortable using to talk to each other right now, we are going to see a nice linear growth. I don't think we're going to see explosive J-curve growth anywhere in the metaverse technologies for the next 5 years, though.
Anywhere? You don't think we're going to see? I mean, and as an example, then tell me, what do you think Second Life, how many users do you guys want to have a year or 5 years from now?
I think you'll see us continue to grow linearly. We've seen a good deal of growth during COVID, but that growth still looks like these economic and creative communities kind of grow at their own content rate. The user-generated content sort of gates the rate at which they can grow. So I would expect that we're going to continue to see some nice linear growth, from millions to many millions in Second Life. But to get to that next stage of 100 million or a billion, like you hear Facebook talking about, that's a much bigger problem. And we still have challenges with bringing people in that make it hard. And, there is activity with kids. Roblox and Fortnite have a ton of kids in them. But the difference between a virtual world for kids and a virtual world that you and I would use every day, it's a big difference.
Why is that a big difference? I mean, I have my brother, his kids are on Roblox and Fortnite, and he's playing right there with them. And, why can't these worlds merge, especially when you have these deals like Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, right? Microsoft is sort of bringing the enterprise tools, whatever that means, to the gaming world. Why can't they kind of combine?
There's a theory that I've heard around the metaverse, but I do think it's really just kind of hype, which is that these games, for example, games like Fortnite would make more sense if you could sort of fly between them. If you could take your avatar or I always say, imagine taking your car, from Grand Theft Auto and driving it into Fortnite or Among Us. I think that idea is exciting from a brand perspective and a kind of a, leverage perspective, but it isn't really exciting for a person. But as we get to social environments like going to a live event where you could go to the live event, dress the way you want to dress as an avatar, that then makes all this interconnection metaverse stuff make sense.
But we've had concerts in the Fortnite and Roblox metaverses.
That brings up actually a really interesting scaling challenge. One of the challenges here that we're dreaming about, but we're not yet seeing. So Fortnite was 100,000 different concerts, each with 50 people in them, 50 to 100 people. It's interesting. And so if you were there as an adult, you are there with 50 other people, which doesn't feel much like a concert yet. But the technology changes to get 500 people in a room, which we've done with high fidelity, or about 100 people together in one place, which is what Second Life supports today. They're coming. Yeah, that's part of why I think we will see strong growth in the coming years, but it's still a lot of tech work that needs to happen.
What about BTS though? I don't know what the numbers are, but I can only imagine that they had more than 50 people watching them roll out their music video in the metaverse. So is that an example of sort of what could lead to that J-curve growth? But you still seem kind of skeptical of it.
Yeah, these examples that use live video like BTS, there's a lot of examples of basically kind of augmenting a broadcast with some sort of a shared experience. But again, the number of people that are actually adjacent to each other in those shared experiences is still quite limited. Although the live audience reach in aggregate may be enough to merit, doing it.
We do have a comment on YouTube that I want to get to, and please continue to send them in to our audience. Alex says that I think people should quit worrying about competition and just do their own thing. Creating virtual worlds is fun. If it's good, it's good. It will sell. I got to imagine you would agree with that sentiment.
I do think, and I think it's an important point. We're still at such an early stage where we're kind of doing R&D while the airplane is trying to take off. We're trying to figure out things like not being nauseated, right? In VR goggles. Mm-hmm. We don't even have a technical plan for how to do that. I say we, the industry. We don't know how to not make people feel sick, or a significant percentage of people feel sick. So it's a hard problem.
Right. Okay. Now talk a little bit, I know you have in the past, about the mega tech giants taking this on and the business model that they employ that is under a lot of scrutiny from lawmakers right now. And I'm talking about Facebook, Meta using ad targeting, and how you think that could kind of be a dangerous path for the metaverse to go down.
Well, I think we are all worried about it, and you can imagine it, right? I mean, going from behavioral modification and ad targeting and suggestions like you see on Facebook and on YouTube, moving that into a virtual world where you're surveilling every move that everybody makes and where their eyes are looking, and whether they're shaking because they're nervous. These are things that are going to lead to terrible, terrible existential threats for us if we allow those business models to drive them. On the other hand, you can switch to a fee-based business model. I've written about this a lot lately. Second Life has a model that doesn't use ads or behavioral targeting or surveillance. It basically charges fees for things like hosting land and for some of the transactions people make. And Second Life makes more money, revenue per user, than YouTube and Facebook, for example. So it's possible to do a business model that doesn't harm people. And I think there's a lot of merit in just, putting a lot of time into thinking about how to do that right.
Are you talking about sort of a decentralized unit as well? We talked about this in terms of Axie Infinity, which is a very popular play-to-earn game. And it's so interesting. I was reading that Second Life had a GDP in 2006 of 64 million. How big can that be?
Second Life's GDP, in 2006 was 64,
In
but
2006.
in 2021, it's 650 million. So
Wow.
about 10x growth from that original number. Yeah, the GDP is big. And to get to an economic system and a social system that allows people from all over the world to interact with each other, it's going to have to be a decentralized system. I think the early decentralized plays, you mentioned Axia, it's a great example. They're probably more decentralized than where we as a population will ultimately settle. There's going to be a mix between some sort of services and intermediaries and fully decentralized, but we are needing to move toward decentralized. And in fact, some of the patents that we brought over from High Fidelity to Second Life are actually explicitly about things like decentralized reputation and governance.
Do you see anyone infringing on those patents or being sort of a weapon against sort of the big tech that's looking in this space?
No, more just tools that we hope to use to perhaps be of assistance to Second Life as it grows. But no, I like most innovators in the space. These patents in my opinion, should never be used offensively.
Interesting. Here's another good comment from YouTube from Bonnie. She says, how can a proprietary platform be a universal metaverse, i.e. when a company owns everything that the user produces in world? So essentially, how can a walled garden become a metaverse? Fascinating question, and certainly something we look at with the big tech giants.
Simple answer is I think she's right. It's a good question, and it can't. I think the simple, when the internet was growing at its greatest rate, this is a fun statistic. It was growing at a rate of 350,000 new sites a day. That was in 2012. Now, even if a company, had the interest or the architecture to do something like that, it would be nearly impossible to get from, 1 million people in Second Life to 1 billion people every day going to work in the metaverse without it being a parallel operation across many, many people and companies. Facebook, in their defense, has said that, but I think we still are going to see a bump in the road where we have to shift from largely centralized walled gardens like Facebook to decentralized environments. So
I guess, what does that look like then? Is there going to be one or two metaverses? Is there going to be one? Who owns it? The users?
Well, it probably depends on those user stories. Like we touched on a couple of them. Kids building things for each other is really what Roblox is doing an incredible job with. Fortnite, concerts in the metaverse. We've seen a little bit of activity there. As I said, we need to get to more people in one concert, but I think the use cases will drive like different distributed environments, and then there'll be protocol and standards work to connect those so that you can. I think it will make sense to bring your clothes and your shoes from one world to another once these worlds are generally usable for socializing.
So then where does that leave? If that's the ultimate vision or business model, I guess, where does that leave a deal like today? Where does Microsoft end up?
I have to kind of defer in a way and say my life has been spent looking at the social experience of bringing people together. In many cases, people that didn't know each other, trying to get them to work together, play together, in virtual worlds. I'm struck, especially lately, by how different the video game industry really is in a lot of ways. And so I find it difficult to see how we make the transition from the video games that are big today, like a Blizzard is offering, to what I think is going to happen to get all of us in there together. And I do think it's pretty different. So it's really hard to say, how the numbers of video games line up with the future of virtual worlds.
I guess that's if you look at this as, a strictly gaming deal, but Microsoft has things like Teams and LinkedIn. Right. Did it make you sort of sit up and think, maybe they could actually compete with Second Life because of those tools?
I think Microsoft is doing a remarkable job putting together a number of tools. I mean, look back to that original purchase of Minecraft, which I think is one of the most important experiential stories that we've seen after Second Life. I think Microsoft is doing a really good job trying to build open components, bring a lot of pieces together. And I suspect, my guess would be that Microsoft will play a significant role. I know their focus is on workplace today, which I think is exciting. It's still hard We're not ready to be avatars at business meetings, but I do think it's likely that they're going to have a huge impact on the industry.
Interesting. Facebook working on that as well, metaverse in the workplace. Here's another good question from one of our viewers who says, many are questioning the age of Second Life technology when newer gaming platforms have better graphics and rendering technologies. At what point will Second Life just be too old?
There's so much to say about that. It is older technology, and it's interesting. It's also the fact that people have built so much content, billions and billions of pieces of content. All that content has to be backwards compatible. It has to work forever. So it's a little bit, Second Life's a little bit like the Intel computers running on Windows as those years went by, and we had to always keep everything backwards compatible. So I do think there's a challenge there. I think how we solve that at Second Life remains to be seen. I do think that the comment is right. I think the way forward is starting over in a lot of ways with newer technology while keeping the community, for example, of Second Life alive and well, and then offering new things in separate systems.
Right. And Philip, there was a lot of interest about you going back. It sort of showed the enduring aspect of Second Life. What do you guys do now? Is there a big marketing push to get users on board? Do you take advantage of this moment where there's so much hype around the metaverse?
There's good steady growth happening right now. There's not a particular marketing push I think we do. I think things like big brands have never gone together as well with this pure user generated content that I ultimately think is what drives success here. So I think we'll see steady growth. I'm enjoying being back in a part-time in an advisory role, just jumping in there and giving ideas when I can.
I bet. And the environment is ripe for M&A, as we have seen. Are you guys for sale? Have you been approached? And, what is the ultimate goal here? Do you want to see Second Life go public, become decentralized? Would you ever sell to a big tech or any tech company?
Boy, that's a lot of different questions, and I love it. I'd be very reluctant to sell if I thought that what we were doing was going to cause harm to people. But that decision's not mine. I'm an advisor to the company, and of course, I love the company and its community. But I think that there's kind of a different way that Second Life is pursuing things that I hope it can continue to do successfully on its own. Our revenues and our profits are great. So I think we can continue to grow steadily, without needing additional things like funding.
Without needing additional things like funding. But is that really, when you think about the billions of dollars that Facebook is pouring in and the technological side of this and even the marketing side, you wouldn't want that?
I would only say again that, and maybe I'm biased here as an engineer, I am very much a product person, but I would say that we've still got a few years to really sort out who's going to be doing what. Like you mentioned, Microsoft, I think there's probably moves that Microsoft has yet to make that'll really have a big impact on the market. So I think maybe not so much that in the long term, there's not a tremendous amount of continued investment required, but more, I don't really see that happening, right in the short term where everybody was woken up to the idea of the metaverse to a certain extent because of Facebook kind of claiming the name. Yeah. And then the other extent is really COVID. And we are looking at if we have to do social experiences online outside of what we've been doing with the internet today, how does that shake out as a business model? Who gets in there? Which big companies have a play in that? And I think that's exciting, but again, it's still a few years away.
Still a few years away. Are we talking 2, 5, 10?
I think 5 years for the VR headsets, unfortunately. I think there's just a lot of big technical hardware challenges there. And then I think more like, maybe 3 years as we see more of things sorting out around decentralization, like you mentioned, how do we use the blockchain to accelerate virtual worlds? Questions like that are still very, very vague. And I say that as somebody who's worked on this stuff for almost 30 years. Crazy.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, well, this was great. And this was I just want to end on this great comment from Mimi, who says, you still got lots of fans out there, Philip. She says, there's no other third world like Second Life, and the work they're doing in world right now is great. After so many years, they're more on fire than ever. So you still got users, fans out there.
Wonderful. It gives me such a smile. That's great. It's fun to have gotten to work on something that is still around and has had a positive impact.
And we are so excited to see what you do now that you're back at the company. We hope you'll join us again on an update. Keep us posted.
Certainly.
We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much, Philip. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.